Interest rates prime went to 21.5 and stayed that way for 18 months. Now add 0.5 to that for not being prime, we're talking about 23% interest. Now multiply that by $500,000 and you'll see that there's quite a large sum of money that I was not expecting to pay. And that was quite a surprise to me. Well, I found out that I had been an owner of life insurance from almost the get-go. First policy I have had, my dad bought for me when I was 13 years old. He paid the first annual premium, and then he took me aside when the next one came due and said, I started this for you. It's yours. You pay the premium.
So Nelson, I'd like to take you back to 1981, 1982, period in which inflation had skyrocketed. You found yourself in a very stressful financial situation, which you touch on in the book. May I ask you to expand on that and share with viewers? Take us back to that period in time and what was happening with you in your financial life at that time.
Well, you remember I'm a forester. We need to go back a few years past that. Back in the late 70s, I was involved in the real estate business because timber is real estate. Remember, I'm a forester. Timber is real estate. And so I had an interest in that sort of thing. Now, the glories of leverage, it was out there in people's minds so big time. They said, all you got to do is go buy some property and now borrow the money to pay for it because you're always dealing with borrowed money. You either borrow from somebody else and pay interest or use your own money and give up interest. Now, interest rates back at that time, 90-day loans was 8%. Now, that was prime rate. But the definition of prime rate is the best customers the banks have. It used to be General Motors, but we can't say that anymore, can you? Because it's government motors now. Anyway, I'm not prime. And all these years that I've been teaching this concept all over the United States and Canada, I've asked people, any of you prime customers of a bank? I've never met but one, and I'm quite sure he was lying. I'm not prime either. You got to pay 1.5 over. And I made some money in the late 70s at 9.5% interest. Shucks, there was one deal that my wife and I went to Europe for a month off the proceeds of one little deal, and I never have seen that property. I don't know where it is. Now, you pull off several of those in a row and you get a disease. That disease is more. I indulged more and more as time went by. And then along came what you were talking about, 1980 and 81. Interest rates prime went to 21.5 and stayed that way for 18 months. Now add 0.5 to that for not being prime, we're talking about 23% interest. Now multiply that by $500,000 and you'll see that there's quite a large sum of money that I was not expecting to pay. And that was quite a surprise to me. Well, I found out that I had been an owner of life insurance from almost the get-go. First policy I have had, my dad bought for me when I was 13 years old. He paid the first annual premium, and then he took me aside when the next one came due and said, I started this for you. It's yours. You pay the premium. Well, when I was 16 years old, I bought my second policy. So I had been buying respectable amounts of life insurance, and I noticed that I could get the money at 5, 6, and 8% from 3 different life insurance companies. Only problem was that it's the same thing as down at the bank when you ask them how much of a check can you write, they ask you how much do you have in you. That's how big a check you can write. I had been paying respectable premiums, but nowhere near what I should be, because your need for finance during your lifetime is much greater than your need for protection. And that is the essence of what I discovered out there, that people had totally overlooked that aspect. And so I saw that I needed to up my premiums big time. And from that, I could borrow and pay off the snakes and dragons, and then later on pay off the loans and such. So it's been a long-term project there, some 35 years or so by now.
You've also shared in that example that the situation was compounded by there was a partner that was involved in some of the real estate transactions.
Yes, there was all kind of other complications there. See, for instance, November of 1980, first grandchild was born. My wife went over to be with the new baby for several days. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, okay, this is 1980. And so the inflation things had really started big time. And what that caused was things that people did not expect. Like drug junkies started supporting their habit by stealing other folks' silver. 3 o'clock in the afternoon while my wife was gone, they cleaned our house out. 2 months later, my 52-year-old brother drops dead with a heart attack, January 1st, 1981. Poor choice of ancestors. 5 months later, our second granddaughter is born out in Hawaii. 5 weeks later, they discover she has cancer. I didn't know children could have cancer. She went on chemo at 6 months. She had surgery sometime later to remove the tumor from her adrenal gland. It was a neuroblastoma, very, very rare. Only 500 cases per year in America. So she went on chemo at 6 weeks, had surgery to remove the tumor at about 4 months. But the stuff had got into her liver, and she had to go back on chemo and maxed out. It got to the point where if the doc said more chemo, the kids just said no. One or the other will get her. Miraculously, 5 months later, it all disappeared. She's cured. 10 years ago, she delivered our first great-grandson. And 4 years later, she delivered our first great-granddaughter. So we've seen a miracle. But that was the summer interest rates went to 23%, and yours truly got hung owing $500,000. Now, you add all those things up in a short period of time, we're talking about 7 months time frame, all that happened. The quality and quantity of your prayer life will increase dramatically. And so what I saw is that I could, as a result of prayer, that I was looking at things the way the world looks at them, about money and about banking and such. And that if I would reorganize my thinking, buy lots of life insurance, borrow from it and pay off the snakes and dragons, that would be the solution. And so that was the genesis of the infinite banking concept.